started dancing.
whole gang of ages on you, baby.
I think we both started dancing at the same time.
You're just like my daughter, that's all.
Well, you know I don't look upon him as nobody's daddy. No, like I said, my experience is different from these gentlemen. I can tell you about my life and what happened in my life, but they really, we never did the movies. The first movie I did was when he showed the film of Malcolm X. I was sitting with Manu and I was saying, there I go, there I go. I did that movie with these two gentlemen here, and it was my first and last of doing anything to do with the movies. And Herrang is my first of doing anything that has to do with history. This is history, and I'm proud to be here. And I would like for you to talk to the old man.
The ice cream is for me.
Affordable, what's meaning?
So I guess the word was passed over in Frankie's direction a little bit there, and we all know it. Frankie kind of grew up in Harlem, so maybe what was it like, Frankie? 20s, 30s, what was Harlem like at that period of time?
Oh wow, growing up in Harlem was like growing up in Herrang. Well, we don't let it happen. Well, as Don was saying, pointing to me, saying that, you know, like these young gentlemen, thanks Don, call me young Dave. Because I've been around a long time. And as a matter of fact, in case you guys don't realize it, I come from the last century. You don't even know when that was. That's how young you are. But I was born back in 1914. And as I said, that was the last century, baby. And it will be a century 8 years from now. And most of that time, since I was 3 years old, it was at a period of time when music was the thing and dancing was the swing. So when I come up, it was like music everywhere, because it was like during the First World War. You don't know nothing about that, but you have to really read history to find out about the First World War. But this was during the First World War, and I went to New York in 1917, and that was just at the end of that war. And that was what they call the jazz age, when people like Louis Armstrong was coming along, and Scott Joplin, and all those musicians that came along in those early years. And I should say that I had the pleasure of meeting, working with, and hanging out with guys like Louis Armstrong, Satchmo. And as I said, it was such a wonderful period because it was all music. And because of the war and because of the Depression, there was a lot of tension on. And people who had jobs to work, they needed an outlet. So dancing and listening to music was the thing. I remember when I was Don said her father pushed her on the stage when she was 3 years old. But I remember when I was a very young kid down in Aiken, South Carolina, I used to go down on the farm. My aunt had a farm down there, and like on Saturday nights, they would have what they called Saturday night fish fries. And all the neighborhood and the workers on the farm, they would gather out on the porch. and somebody would have maybe a guitar, harmonica, or whatever they had to make music with their feet, with their hands, and they just be clapping and carrying on, you know. And I remember I was standing on the side, and my grandmother, she used to push me out, try to push me out of the center, you know, circle. Go out there and dance, you know, like you're a young kid, you know, at that time, and you want her, but you know, she pushing me out there. I don't want to do that. And she just keep pushing me. So I get out there in the circle, man, and I be going, I was checking out the town. And she said, okay, that's enough, come on. I don't want to come out now. I just want to stay out there and dance now. She couldn't get me in there, but she couldn't get me out either. So it was wonderful. And we used to live like there was a river by the farm, but just across the river, there was one of these holy roly churches. Y'all know anything about that? Nah, you're too young for that stuff. Anyway, they had these churches, and in these churches, this sucker would be saying, yes, indeed, you got to go to heaven. Or you got to go to heaven. Are you going to what? Well, we heard it. And man, and you know, after it's all over, you know, we kids, we used to get out in the yard, and I used to be like, I'd pretend I'm the preacher, and these kids would pretend that they were the, you know, like the audience, you know, and I'd be saying, yes, or you want to go to hell? Let's shout, sisters, shout. And the other kids would say, yes, yes, praise God, the preacher, bless my soul, yes. I said, can I get an amen? Amen. All right. But it was so wonderful, you know, because it was just music all around. It just made you want to dance, just want to do some kind of movement. And when I was in Harlem in New York, it was the same type of thing. Of course, it wasn't churches. There was nightclubs and ballrooms that had music. And you could go anywhere. You could be walking down the street and you hear music coming from any one of the buildings down there. There were so many nightclubs. Oh man, I couldn't even, on practically every block, I'll say. And there was also ballrooms on practically every block. So you could go someplace to dance, or you could just be walking down the street and you'd be listening to music. So, you know, the only thing I feel bad for you guys is that you do not have the ballrooms like we had them. Back in those days, they had, like I said, on nearly every corner there was like a ballroom, and in each ballroom they had a live orchestra, live band playing, because they didn't have no DJs, they didn't have no CDs, you know, none of those things like that. So they had to use live musicians in the nightclubs, in the theaters, and in the ballrooms. So you could pay, let's say you pay 25 cents and you go into a ballroom and you could hear somebody like Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Louis Armstrong, you know, any of those guys for 25 cents. And not only did you hear them, you could dance to the music that they were playing. You know, now, I said that was 25 cents, and those are famous people, they are legends, all right? So now, how much would you have to pay to go to a place just to hear music? Not dance, just to hear it. About $150, right? And you can't dance. Pay 25 cents, and we could dance from 9 o'clock at night until 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't you envy me? Yeah. But that's the way it was back in those days, though, Leonard. It was just dancing and music, and I'm just here, and I'm happy to be here to say that I was there to enjoy that, and I'm so happy that, as I said, I'm still here, so I can maybe bring a little of that to you and tell you about how it was then. But I have a lot of memories.
We started to dance, and it was really because my mother took me to the famous Roxy Theater in New York City, Manhattan, to see my dad dancing with his group, Whitey's Lindy Hoppers, I believe, or Whitey's Maniacs, one of those, on the famous Roxy Theater. Now, I had never seen a live show before. I was about 10, 11 years old, and it was so exciting. The music, the lighting, and the colorful costumes, and the guys were throwing the girls every which way. And I mean, the people were clapping and hollering and screaming, and they were doing the same thing on stage. It was the most exciting thing I ever seen. So after the show, my mother turned to me and said, do you think you'd like to be up on stage dancing like your dad? What was I supposed to say? I have just seen the most exciting thing I had ever seen, so I turned and said yes. Next thing I knew, I was in dancing school. And that was Mary Bruce Dancing School. They recommended me to go to Mary Bruce Dancing School. So I was in dancing school, and I liked it. There were lots of boys, lots of girls, and I stayed there for approximately like five years. And I started